Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is What If Naruto Has Harem with Hinata no FemHaku FemKyuu, Kurenai Anko Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Uzumaki Naruto looked out over the expanse of field in front of him, the staging area of what would soon be the final battle between the forces of leaf, sand and grass against the forces of sound, stone, cloud and mist. Each of those villages currently in the battle against them had some form of vendetta or qualm with Konoha in one form or fashion. Sound was led by a man who turned missing nin on them, Stone had a long-standing grudge against Konoha's Yondaime and, by extension, his son after learning Naruto himself was the famous ninja's child. Then Cloud simply wanting the Byakugan and Mist hated all bloodlines, which Konoha favored and allowed to live and prosper within their walls. Right now, the huge plain was a pristine green of beautiful nature, but on the other side, barely visible to his enhanced eyesight granted by the Kyuubi no Kitsune, he could see the combined army of everyone against his side. What's the matter, Naruto-kun? Hyuga Hinata came up and wrapped her arms around her boyfriend of 2 months' chest from behind. We're sorely outnumbered this time around, he whispered. Hinata hugged him tighter to her and nuzzled his neck. Sand has only about 200 ninja left, grass about 1800 and our own are down to barely a 3000. We'll make it through this, Naruto-kun. We also do and always will. Naruto was silent a few minutes as they both took in the world around them. I have an idea as to how I can have their numbers, but I'll be useless afterwards. Naruto knew he was in it deep when she stopped her nuzzling. The fingernails digging into his chest were also a good hint. You're not using that jutsu. Her voice came out as soft as always, but he couldn't miss her killer intent. It's too dangerous. Don't make me use it to keep you from doing this. Naruto sighed and turned towards his girlfriend, already knowing he couldn't get into more trouble. I can take out at least half of their numbers in the beginning, my Tenshi-chan. I can make things that much easier on our soldiers. He grabbed her hands and pulled them together in his own and kissed her knuckles. We're outnumbered 7-1 right now. I have to do this. I can take out far more of them this way than in any other, and our soldiers won't be overwhelmed from the beginning. I know, she interrupted him before he could keep going. I know, but that doesn't mean I like it. Naruto smiled and hugged her close. No, you don't, but it would be easy enough for you to protect me until I can fight again. It's a long-range jutsu, after all. It won't be like before, not with you in control of the Kyuubi, Tenshi-chan. Hinata nodded, completely silent. After Naruto learned to control Kyuubi's chakra, they learned that he would be corrupted the longer he was under its effects to the point of attacking anyone but Hinata, who he considered his mate, after only a few minutes. Now that they had put a special seal on a demonic artifact, Naruto was effectively under Hinata's every command while he was using the Kyuubi's chakra, protecting those around him. I suppose it has to be done. Within Naruto, a very large, red fox became infuriated. Using several of the cracks existing within the seal thanks to constant use over the past 3 years, she forced her influence and mind over Naruto's own, ignoring the searing pain this brought about thanks to the seal in place that kept her power under Hinata's control. Like hell, she yelled through clenched teeth. Enter. Mind. Talk. Losing the fight against the seal, she allowed herself to be flung back into her seal to await a shocked Hinata and confused Naruto's arrival. What the hell? Naruto gasped. He could tell that the Kyuubi was worried about something, but unsure of exactly what it could be that would convince her to fight the seals in place strongly enough to actually break through them temporarily just to get out a message. The pain was severe enough that it had caused her to pass out the last time she tried. I don't know, Hinata said. Kyuubi just broke through and said she wanted to talk to us. Naruto had his hands on his knees as he panted. Pain wasn't exactly one way when the Kyuubi tried to push through like that. He just didn't get it anywhere nearly as bad. Do we go? He asked. Hinata shrugged in return. We've not got anything to lose. Naruto nodded and mumbled about masochistic, bastard foxes. The two went to Hinata's private tent next to the Godimes for being her current apprentice and sat cross-legged on the ground, facing each other with their knees touching and began to meditate with Naruto taking Hinata directly into his mindscape. It had changed over the years, becoming more of a large building with rooms filled with symbolic representations of all that he knew. But neither was willing to spend time going over everything and instead went to the library. It was the one place, aside from her room, that the Kyuubi would frequent. She refused to say why, but it was rare for her to not be there. Sadly, Hinata's control was only over the Kyuubi's power and not the Kyuubi herself. Stepping into the room, they saw the Kyuubi in her human form sitting in a very large, overstuffed, leather chair. It was the only thing in the room that was of gargantuan size aside from the bookshelves themselves. She easily sat on the cushion that was large enough for all three of them with plenty of room to spare. As she looked up, her red eyes glinted with pure rage as the choker around her neck flared a deep and golden honey color. You, Uzumaki Naruto, are an idiot. Naruto blinked. Of all the things he had expected her to want to say or talk about, that most certainly wasn't one of them. What the hell are you talking about? You put us both in the agony of activating that seal and that is what you have to say to me. Kyuubi scoffed and rolled her eyes. Bah, take a seat and I'll explain exactly what I'm talking about. She waited while the two did just that, wary of anything she may try on them. Now, let me start from the beginning, and keep quiet while I talk. There's a lot to get through. She situated herself and set her book down beside herself on the chair. Alright, you know your dad put the Shikifuan on you, along with a few other seals to let you use my power and that I can't escape without instant death for the both of us. Correct. Still confused, both Naruto and Hinata nodded. Good. Now here's the part that you didn't know. Hell, I didn't even know it until about 2 years ago, and even then, I wasn't sure until you tried that damn jutsu and… What are you talking about, Kyuubi? Naruto interrupted, causing the vixen in front of him to glare. I was getting to that, brat. Now, until 3 years ago, you used my power sporadically and only when you needed to. Since getting that damned necklace made up, you've been using my power like I was a battery for you. What you don't know, however, is that my chakra doesn't replenish itself. What? Kyuubi nodded and sighed. Brat, the last time you used that jutsu you're planning on using now, it took up over a third of my power. Because my body was from the demonic realm, or summons realm to you humans, it disappeared back to my original lair after I was sealed within you. That means all of my chakra at that time was sealed within you while my body is stuck there, living, but not alive. However, since I'm not producing chakra, it's like you're dipping out of a well that has just barely under half of its water still in it. Regardless of legend, I don't actually have infinite chakra. I just have so damned much that it would take generations of you pathetic flesh bags to see it even get dented. Wait, Hinata began, you're saying that any time Naruto-kun uses your power, he's draining what you have. Kyuubi nodded, ignoring being interrupted again since she understood. Correct. But not only that, once my chakra is gone, I cease to exist with the way this seal bound me. And without my power, which Naruto's body has learned to live with, will fail, causing him to die as well. Both of them suddenly understood what she was saying. If he used her power without being careful, the two of them would simply die. And he was about to do a jutsu that nearly take away what was left. But, I have to do this. Too many will die if I don't. I can watch what I use afterwards and… Foolish mortal. Using the jutsu again while you have access to all of my power now will use up almost, if not all, of my power. We will die. That's why the lecture forbade you from using it when you went to rescue the Tanuki. Naruto quickly glanced at Hinata and then back at Kyuubi, thoughts of helping his friends in their battle no matter the cost flashing through his mind. Hinata, however, was the smarter of the two and bashed him upside the back of his head. Don't even think about it. But, Tenshi-chan, don't you dare Tenshi-chan me. You're too important to this whole thing than to throw your life away on a jutsu that we don't even know will take out as many as we think it will. Naruto flinched back as she rose to her feet and leaned over him, the Kyuubi watching with amusement. Naruto was a 19-year-old man, one of the strongest of his village even without her own power, and was cowering in fear from the girl in front of him. If time weren't so important, she'd love to watch this continue, but sadly, they were on a very tight schedule. If you please, I have another option available to us. Both Naruto and Hinata looked at Kyuubi in surprise, blinking, as if they'd forgotten she were there. Really? You'd think that I wasn't important or something. PFF'd. What do you mean, Kyuubi? Kyuubi sighed as Hinata sat back down and Naruto pressed himself against the far edge, aware from her ire. Listen, I currently have just a little over half of my original power. That is still a massive amount compared to your whole village. What I propose is to go back in time to stop many of the deaths you now have and empower yourselves with your current knowledge. You mean, you can actually take us back in time? Kyuubi nodded and held up a finger. I can, and will. Under a few conditions to keep this from happening all over again. Naruto and Hinata looked at each other before Hinata tuned to the demon and nodded. We can at least hear you out. Very well. What I suggest is going back in time, and you not using my power at all. Instead, we do something different. Like what? Naruto asked. While I'm within you, I cannot regain any lost chakra. However, I can, she paused and made a face to show she was highly displeased with this option, give you the Kitsune summoning contract. You won't be able to summon anyone other than myself, as I'll have to write the contract up, but it will work, and you may summon me for battle anytime you wish. By being summoned, I'll be given my old body and my chakra will replenish each time I'm summoned, so it's a winning situation for us all. That's it. All we have to do is offer to summon you at any time other than using your power. Kyuubi looked a little sheepish for a moment and looked away from the two in front of her. No, you see, when you go back, it will be only your memories. Your chakra levels, your physical attributes and appearances, all of those will be the same you of your past. It will be just like it was then, only your current minds. Because of this, your chakra control, both of you, will be nearly astronomical, since control is made up of physical and mental energies, the control being mental and the levels being physical. But, to make you both go back in time, or either of you, really, you can't be human. You will need to blend with me a little. Naruto was suddenly skeptical while Hinata was curious. And exactly what does that mean? You will gain increased speed, strength, senses and a thrill for battle. Also, your chakra levels will raise greatly, but nothing like what you have now. You will effectively become Hanyu, or half-demons. Human in all regards with all the benefits. I can control that much, at least. You'll gain tails, ears, clawed hands and the senses like those of a fox, except your hands will just have stronger and thicker nails. But you'll be able to hide these changes at will, so don't worry about that, she quickly said when she saw Naruto taking a deep breath to yell. Doing this at all makes this merger impossible to escape, as it will happen regardless, but you will remain your human selves. Though, the merger will also create a bond between the two of you. Kyuubi watched as they seemed to think it over until Hinata asked the question she'd been waiting for. Exactly what kind of a bond is that? Kyuubi fidgeted slightly before answering, unsure how they would take this. A bond of mates. Hinata's face erupted into a fierce blush as a huge grin spread across her visage. Naruto himself paled drastically and was about to yell out at the Kyuubi until he noticed Hinata's face. That wasn't the face of a girl who was upset with the idea. Hinata-chan. What do? Naruto looked between the two females nervously. What do you think of this? Hinata got up with a smile and kissed him deeply. That this is a great idea, she said brightly before turning back to Kyuubi. And you still have enough strength to send us all back, even at half. Kyuubi nodded. Yes. You see, everything you know and see outside will cease to exist. We will go backwards and erase everything from the point of our return and everything will alter depending on what we change. By going backwards, our energies will take over that from whatever we had at that point in time as we go back. Basically, we'll be getting recharged by our past selves as we pass each moment with whatever energy that they had at the time. She waited a few moments while they considered it before speaking again. We really don't have a lot of time to think it over, however. Even getting slight recharges from our past selves, it won't be enough to keep us going. Just allow us to go back that tiny fraction of a second more and, with the war about to start, we can't afford to waste anything. Why did you wait so long to offer this? If it has to happen, shouldn't you have offered it when you realized it? Kyuubi was surprised Naruto had caught that, but answered nonetheless. I would have, but I was honestly hoping to come up with a way to separate us so that I wouldn't cease to exist. She shuddered as the idea of simply not being flashed through her mind. I would rather live in your fuzzy navel than not at all. If I died this way, I wouldn't even go back to hell or heaven. I would simply cease to be. The two humans watched as Kyuubi's eyes widened as she spoke and a frightened light lit behind them. You can't understand how horrible it would be to live hundreds of millions of years and then be faced with something like that. As Kyuubi closed her eyes and tried to calm down and stop her slight shaking, Naruto and Hinata looked at one another, a silent agreement made almost immediately. What do we have to do? Shocked out of her attempts to calm herself, Kyuubi flinched slightly when Hinata spoke before nodding. If you're ready, we can go now. You're already touching, and you're giving permission, which is all I need now. I've had everything else prepared already. There's just one more thing I'm going to ask. Naruto and Hinata watched as they watched Kyuubi squirm in her seat. What's that, Kyuubi? I know I'll have to be good, and I promise to. Even with the necklace you've got now, which you can remake in the past, you'll be able to be sure of that, but she blushed lightly and squirmed a little more before squaring her shoulders. I want you to summon me at least twice a week so that I can experience the world again. I can control my size and transform into my human form that you see now. It's lonely in here all by myself, she finished with a whisper. She had spent years, centuries really, all by herself in her past. But she had always experienced life through her own eyes and her own experiences. Living life through Naruto, and being forced to experience what he did, she yearned for the very same things he had, but didn't have anyone within his mind to fulfill the needs that he ended up with in so many different people. Naruto and Hinata, however, simply saw this as what it seemed. A soul who was alone for 19 years and didn't want to be anymore. I can do that. Just make sure you be good, otherwise, it ends. Kyuubi nodded before closing her eyes and appearing to concentrate. Suddenly, the whole mindscape disappeared and they watched as every experience they had seemingly rewound itself until things became unbearably white. XXXXXXX. The room was spinning as Naruto tried to sit up and get his bearings. It had taken several minutes before the back and forth motion seemed to stop and the room finally steadied itself enough for him to truly look around. He saw dirty clothes strewn about the bedroom, empty ramen cups everywhere and trash cans filled to overflowing. Sweet Kami, this place is a dump, he groused as he crawled out of bed, only to stumble and fall flat on his face. Ow, what the hell? Ha, that was brilliant. What the hell is going on? Kyuubi laughed at Naruto even harder than she was. You're shorter than you were before. You tried to move around like you were before you went back. Haha. Naruto growled about karma and having displeased some god somewhere in a past life as he got up and showered, then put on his orange jumpsuit. Oi, Fox, when did we go back to? He asked as he noticed his old goggles where he always left it until he got his forehead protector. I'm not sure. It doesn't work that way. We went backwards, though. Naruto sighed as he realized he was really beginning to dislike having gone back. I guess I'll find Hinata-chan and we can find out. If I've still got this thing, then we must be in the academy somewhere. Getting everything he had, along with a blank scroll and pen, he left quickly after creating several cage bunshin to clean up his apartment and made his way towards the academy, just in case he had classes that day. XXXXXXX. Hinata sat up and looked around, having much better stability than Naruto did. Looking over her clothes and at her calendar, she realized they were only a month from the genin selection exams. With a smile, she got out of bed and carefully oriented herself as she went to take a quick bath, re-establish herself with her height and reach and meet up with Naruto. They had a lot to talk about, and plenty of time for a Saturday. After getting dressed in her usual outfit for the time period she had re-entered, she began her walk to exit the house, enjoying the sight of her home still undamaged from war. She left the grounds with a large smile on her face and a bounce in her step. 3 years of war were simply erased from her mental image over Konoha as she looked at everything with fresh, new eyes. As quickly as she could, she went directly towards Naruto's apartment and found an orange blob rushing off towards the academy. With a smile, she took off after him, closing the distance rapidly before tackling him to the ground. Oomph. Both went tumbling along the ground, the villagers looking on in shock and curiosity until they came to a stop with Naruto on his back and Hinata straddling his stomach with a large, cheesy grin. "Hello, Hinata-chan," he wheezed, still disoriented from the sudden attack. "Hello, Naruto-kun." She got off and grabbed him by the ear, getting a yelp of shock from the boy. "Now come on. There's no way you're keeping those horrible jumpsuits anymore." She began to drag Naruto as he hunched over slightly and walked quickly to keep up with her. The villagers who witnessed the whole event chuckled as they watched the Hyuga heiress drag Naruto around. XXXXXXX. Yamanaka Ino was minding her parents' flower shop when she saw shy, demure little Hyuga Hinata literally dragging her long-standing crush by his ears, mindless of the begging and pleading he was doing to be released and that he'd follow her willingly if she'd just let him go. "Mom, something came up. I've gotta go." Ino ran out of the door to her shop, ignoring the jingle of the bell and ran up to Hinata. "Hey you two, what's up?" Naruto shuffled over so he could look at Ino as he spoke to her. Apparently, we decided orange isn't a very good color for a ninja and I am currently being convinced into going and getting something new." Ino snickered as she looked at Hinata, obviously the one in charge. "Want any help?" Hinata thought about it for a moment before agreeing. In the previous timeline, she had never been one for shopping. It was either a branch member who did whatever shopping was necessary or she went with the girls while they shopped. Ino's experience would be very helpful while looking for deals and, Hinata had to admit, the girl had a fashion sense greater than her own. "That should be okay. We're going to be getting him a full wardrobe, and some new equipment, so it may take a little while. Are you okay with that?" Ino's smile only became predatory. "Very much so. This is what I live for." Naruto squirmed under Hinata's grip, knowing that getting away would put him into the Inuzuka complex, so to speak. "Don't I get a say in this?" Both girls looked at him, almost having forgotten he was there. "No," they both replied, causing the boy to let out a whimper. Hinata turned back to Ino and frowned. "I'll allow it under one condition. I don't want to hear any crap about the Uchiha that is unneeded, do you understand?" Ino's eyes widened as Hinata voiced her demands, unsure how any girl could not want to talk about him. "Why not? Hinata raised her hand sharply, instantly quieting the other girl before forcing Hinata to kill something. "Because I have absolutely no interest in him and would rather not talk about something so mundane or droll as he is. You have the right to stop me from talking about a topic you don't want to speak about, or talk about the Uchiha with someone else if you meet them, but not to me." Ino still wasn't sure how any sane girl could not like Uchiha Sasuke, the boy was a gift from above. But then again, this was the same girl who liked Uzumaki, dead last, Naruto. "I can live with that." Hinata smiled and dragged a squirmy, squeaky Naruto to one of her favorite clothing shops. They were a bit more upscale than Naruto would have probably tried to enter on his own, but she knew they'd cater to him at her wish. The couple who ran the store were simply too professional and nice. As they entered, a bell tingled from above the door, alerted the couple to their presence and Ino turned to Hinata. "Hinata, isn't this a little more ritzy than Naruto can afford?" From beneath Hinata's hand, Naruto piped up his own thought. "Especially when you brought me before I could get any extra aside from what I carry for lunch." Hinata let go of Naruto and smiled brightly. "I'll put everything on the Hyuga tab, you can just pay me back later." "Alright." Ino was surprised Naruto would allow Hinata to do such a thing. That he allowed it meant he knew he could afford it or thought he'd be able to get out of having to pay at a later time, but that seemed to go against everything Naruto was in his beliefs. She may not know the kid on much of a personal level, but his values were hard to miss. "Good evening, Lady Hinata. How may we assist you today?" Mitsuki, the wife of Dojin, was the nicer and less formal of the two and always treated Hinata more like a granddaughter than client. A fact that almost always gave Dojin a heart attack at the familiarity. It didn't help the man's disposition that his wife was like that with almost every child that entered. "Hello Mitsuki. I've decided that Naruto-kun here has finally outgrown orange." They all ignored Naruto's grumbling as she continued, and would like to get him looking respectable. "We're going for a whole new wardrobe today." Mitsuki nodded as she grabbed Naruto's arms and squeezed, more like testing meat before buying it and then poking and prodding the boy in the chest. Also, Mitsuki, could we close down the store while we get our things? I'd like to not be bothered. Naruto was paling faster than if he'd seen a ghost. Just how much do you expect me to get? He was again ignored as Mitsuki nodded and simply closed the door and locked it. For the next hour and a half, Hinata and Ino pointed out materials and designs and argued over what he would look best in. After 10 minutes, and Mitsuki's taking control and saying he was her customer, she finally sided with half of Hinata's ideas and half of Ino's, making both girls happy and appreciative as the new idea was better than both of their own. From there, Naruto became nothing more than a life-sized dress-up doll, getting poked with pins to hold materials up and moved about as it was faster than telling him how to position himself. Ino, for her part, was in a state of confusion for nearly the entirety of the visit to the shop. Unless Naruto was working with his underwear, he had apparently no issues with taking anything else off in another's presence. While she was initially shocked, and then about to yell at the boy for public displays of indecency, she got a good glimpse of the boy beneath the shirt and her anger was washed away by pure shock. The boy had muscles. While he certainly wasn't near the league of a bodybuilder, he was lean and had muscles that put even her Sasuke-kun to shame. She, and all of the girls, had known when to peek on some of Sasuke's training sessions and he would sometimes go without a shirt. She remembered being so impressed, but even the last Uchiha had nothing on Naruto. Every movement from the blonde had some kind of ripple effect on the muscles she could see and that caused her to stand and stare more than help with anything else. Hinata and Mitsuki were so wrapped up in Naruto's clothes that they didn't even notice, and Naruto himself had, from almost the beginning, just closed his eyes and allowed himself to be handled as they saw fit. It would be over that much quicker. After an hour and a half, Mitsuki had all the measurements she would need and combinations for each item of clothing and would have them ready in a week. They originally offered to deliver the new clothes, but no one wanted to risk that in Naruto's neighborhood. They didn't get too much, seeing as how they were going to be working out and growing larger rather soon, but they got 2 weeks' worth of clothing for the sake of having it. Ino was very surprised when Naruto offered to buy her an outfit as thanks for her help and gladly accepted, getting a pretty summer dress in a light red color. After leaving, they made their way to Tenten's family's weapon shop. They had nothing against Naruto in the future, so they made a quick stop for Naruto's new equipment there since it was on the way to the ninja outfitting store that all of the Hyuga clan used for their business. They had the best of everything and the widest selection available. They made sure of that when the wealthiest clan solely used them for literally all of their needs. Naruto and Ino followed her into the large store and looked around in surprise at the huge assortment of weapons and jutsu scrolls. Ah, Hyuga-sama, the proprietor began. What can I do for you and your? He paused and sneered at Naruto, being one of those who truly hated the boy, companions. We're here to completely outfit Naruto with new equipment and get a few new items for myself as well, Hinata stated, already planning on getting a few scrolls and outfits. I'm sorry, Hyuga-sama, but we do not cater to his needs. He has wronged us in the past, and Hinata cut the man off with a glare and cold voice. Stop your foolish ramblings. Everyone around her snapped their heads to her and stared in open-mouthed shock. I know exactly what you're speaking about, and that wasn't Naruto. It was something else. The proprietor stepped back in fear and shock as Hinata took a step closer to him. You will either outfit my friends or I swear to you that you will lose all Hyuga business for the rest of your time in Konoha. I don't think you'll do too well in your profit margin for the products you buy before being able to sell them quickly enough. Do you? The man before Hinata shuddered and quickly plastered a smile onto his face. Sure we can work something out. There's no need to be hasty now, Hyuga-sama. I'm sure we can outfit each of your friends with anything they need. He rushed over and put up the closed sign on the door so the very influential Hyuga heiress wouldn't be disturbed and as few people as possible would see the demon brat within his store. They quickly set Naruto up with black cargo pants that held many loops to hold scrolls, which Naruto held a penchant for using after his time training with Jiraiya. He'd really turned into a pack rat, saving any books he'd obtained, weapons he found and equipment and supplies so he always had them if and when he needed them. One of the downsides of growing up without much was that he had a tendency to squirrel things away. And he'd already made plans to do just that once again. It was actually a habit that had helped out in the future. He had learned almost nothing of ninjutsu or genjutsu, but Jiraiya had plans of turning him into a true apprentice, starting with seals and pure physical conditioning to use more of the Kyuubi's chakra at a time, and Naruto had taken the bit on seals to heart when he learned the Yondaime learned everything from the old pervert. He was given a large assortment of dark green, black, white, dark brown and camouflage shirts and new combat boots instead of the sandals he used to wear at that point in the time period. Ino and Hinata made sure that all of his undershirts were reinforced with a protective layer of wire mesh, and Hinata was also very sure to add a metal protection plate to cover Naruto's groin. "Why on earth do you want to put that on his pants?" Ino finally asked after Hinata finished her specifications to the shop owner. "Because, Ino-chan," Hinata demurred. "I rather like it and don't want to see it come to harm. It's a vulnerable location on any male, after all, and very debilitating." While the statement itself was true, Hinata didn't mention how that very attack is what caused Shikamaru to lose a fight roughly 5 years from that date and end up getting killed. To Ino, however, it sounded far more gossip-worthy. "You like it?" she whispered, a slow grin showing up on her face. "And exactly what do you like about it? Have you seen something you shouldn't have?" she whispered, leaning in close to the Hyuga heiress conspiratorially. Hinata, on her part, blushed lightly, not having actually meant to say that first bit. It just kind of came out. But at least she could try and make some of the girls be nicer to Naruto if she let out some of their secrets. At least those that didn't affect them negatively. "I do have the Byakugan, Ino-chan. I can see through anything. He's twice as big as any of the other boys in our class," she told her quietly, actually enjoying the look of shock on Ino's face. "So, you've seen his?" "Not directly, no," she quickly assured Ino. It wasn't a lie, actually. They had been dating for a few months before their return, and they hadn't really gone too far into their relationship physically, due in part because of the war, but mostly because she wanted to wait and Naruto was very willing to wait until she was sure. That didn't mean she didn't have her moments of weakness, however. "So," Ino fidgeted, "have you seen Sasuke-kun's?" Hinata nodded reluctantly. "It's inevitable. I'm given all-around vision like a bubble. I have no choice who I see." Ino grabbed her by the shoulders and shook the girl a little roughly. "Well," Hinata grabbed Ino's hand and held up Ino's index finger to herself, making Ino wonder why she was looking at her own hand. "That finger is bigger than he is." Ino's eyes widened in mute shock. All of her dreams and all of her fantasies had always had him as large as apparently Naruto seemed to be. But this didn't seem right. Sasuke is the last Uchiha. He is supposed to be perfect so he can resurrect his clan. There's no way Sasuke-kun is that small. "You're just what, Ino?" Hinata asked with ice in her voice. "You know I don't care for him in any way. You know that I have no reason to lie and that I am not the type to want to make my Naruto-kun appear to be any better than anyone else for no reason." Ino blinked in shock as Hinata once again seemed to speak up and make her voice heard. "Besides, you can enter others' minds. Have you really never entered Sasuke's and looked?" Ino's face blushed an incredible crimson and sweat formed over her brow as she looked around nervously. Actually, I never thought about it that way." Suddenly, the possibilities seemed endless. So many days left before Genin selection exams, so many trips to the restroom. With a smile, Hinata left Ino to her thoughts as she decided to help Naruto with making sure that protective plate fit properly. She was a very happy soon-to-be kunoichi. XXXXXXX. Naruto and Hinata finally got all of Naruto's things and sealed them in a scroll temporarily. They didn't want to leave all of his new things loose around his apartment or anything in case any of the villagers got curious about his new things. They could remember that happening until a little after the Chunin exams when the villagers found out what he'd done for them. Those storage seals were going to be a godsend. Now, however, they were in Naruto's apartment with Hinata sitting in Naruto's lap with her back against him as he held her in his arms. "So, what's our plan? We've got a month before the Genin selection exams and then team placements." Hinata snuggled deeper into Naruto's embrace as she voiced her concerns. "I don't want to be on a team with Kiba again. The bastard made far too many passes and peeped on Kurenai-sensei and myself too many times. I'll end up killing him this time around. Well, I'm going to try and fail the genin tests again so Mizuki will get me to steal the forbidden scroll again. Ba-chan wound up having to destroy it during the second invasion, so it was all lost. I want to make a copy of it with one of Gigi's jutsu. That sounds like a good plan. When you start using seals like Arrow Senin taught you, no one will notice some extras like that. Naruto nodded. Right, and if I seal it into my body with chakra-sensitive seals like I did some of my more important stuff, then no one even has to know the copies exist. That had been one of Naruto's more favorite ideas in his future days. Crafting a few storage seals on his body so they looked like normal tattoos kept suspicion away from them and no one had ever figured out what they were. Not even Akatsuki and their information specialist. What about team placements? Hinata tilted her head back and kissed Naruto on the curve of his chin, causing him to smile and kiss her on the forehead. I can make sure we're on the same team. The old man owes me one, and I can call him on this. I just can't guarantee who the third member or our sensei will be. Hinata grabbed Naruto's arms and wrapped them around her chest and hugged him to her. What about the invasion or Sasuke's defection and Gaara and the Akatsuki and? We'll just have to get stronger and take everything as we can. We can't do anything about the invasion or Akatsuki as we are right now. And alerting anyone will cause trouble like we can't even hope to get out of. He could feel Hinata shudder in his arms. They both knew that their explanations that nothing physical changed would be heeded and they'd eventually end up being tested if they could prove their story, which they'd have to do to be taken seriously, and then they'd end up probably getting tortured for information on Jutsu and Konoha's enemies' movements and alignments. These were just some of the things they could think of. Neither of them had spent time as interrogators and were worried they were looking on the bright side of what may happen. We should spend our time training together. At this point in time, I was still introverted and you were, well, she said, smiling at him. We'll say I helped you with your chakra control, you helped me with confidence and were a training partner for Gyuken. We can't do anything too strong until after we've made our teams. Naruto nodded, agreeing with all of it. True, but we can get much better after that and just say we were holding back until we made Genin, he said. You mean like you were doing until Chunin? Naruto nodded and chuckled, amused by the comparison. Well, better than that. I was smarter than I let on, but my skills were really as bad as they seemed. I was just oblivious to it. Hinata got up and turned to face him and sat back in his lap again, her legs on either side of him before leaning in and kissing him deeply. After a few moments, she kissed down his jawline and then hugged him tightly. Well, now you have the knowledge and the skills. We'll just have to build up our bodies. Naruto frowned as he realized several things that had seemed off during the day. Now that you mention it, I don't remember my body being this developed the first time around. I was always wiry, but my muscles are far more developed. More like when I got back from my training with Arrow Senin. Hinata cocked her head to the side and thought for a moment before putting her hands underneath of his shirt and running her hands over his chest and abs, enjoying the familiar feel of the ridges and twinging as she hit spots she knew to be ticklish. You're right. This is like your body when you returned, she said with a smile, causing Naruto to smirk. Saucy little minx, aren't you? Hinata laughed and nibbled his neck. Damn right, Naruto-kun, she said. Do you think it's the changes Kyuubi talked about? I'm not sure, he said, frowning. I thought we were supposed to get ears, tails and all that other stuff, but I don't seem much different yet aside from this. We should talk to her now and see what she has to say. Naruto nodded and simply closed his eyes to concentrate since he already had physical contact with Hinata. Almost immediately, they found themselves within the dank sewer-like halls within Naruto's mind. She isn't going to be happy about this. Hinata giggled and pulled him along. Don't worry, Naruto-kun. We can change it to how you had it later. True, he admitted, but we were only able to make the changes after the seal weakened and was malleable and, Naruto stopped short as he walked into the room that traditionally held the Kyuubi within her barred cage with Hinata right beside him, just as shocked. Instead of a mountain of a fox within an even larger cage, they found the Kyuubi in her human form, sitting on a bed in what looked like a normal bedroom and looking extremely bored. Even her human form that she had changed since the time they'd last seen her. Her red hair was longer than her shoulders as it was and now hung to her waist, and her actual body was less beast-like in muscle definition and posture and now appeared to be truly human, save for the features she said they would soon have. The only thing that showed this wasn't an everyday scene in any home in Konoha was the glowing choker around her neck with the Uzumaki spiral centered at the front of her throat. So, she began. Do you want the good news or the bad news first? Kyuubi. What happened? Instead of answering right away, Kyuubi motioned with her hand to a small couch and the two sat, not exactly comfortable with a Kyuubi that seemed to be as free as she was in the future without the binding of the demonic artifact necklace that had been made for them. Well, there's good news and bad. So I'll start with the obvious. She situated herself on the bed so she was laying on her side, supporting herself with her arm. I'm not actually sure how it happened, but you two got off very lucky. That necklace you guys had that allowed you to control my power was tied directly to me and, as such, came back with us. So you still can't use any of your power without Hinata's permission? Naruto asked. That sounded like a good deal. That just meant they were that much better off this early in the beginning. However, Kyuubi grimaced and positively apoplectic and growled at him, making him wonder. No, as much as I would prefer that to my current circumstance, there was no control seal tied directly into either of you. That means that the seal acted on its own. What do you mean? Hinata asked. Are you okay? Kyuubi looked at Hinata and simply blinked. The girl's caring nature always threw her for a loop. Sometimes, she was uncaring towards her, and sometimes, she was like a mother hen, this being one of the latter. It depends on what you consider. Okay, I'm afraid. As of the moment we went back in time, she blushed and looked down, not event wanting to say it. It was just too horrible to have actually happened to someone of her caliber. Damn it, Kyuubi. Just tell us everything you're trying to hide already. Naruto yelled, getting fed up with having to wait for answers. However, when the woman in front of him yelped in severe pain and jerked violently, he began to wonder if maybe he should have allowed her to go at her own speed. Ah, I'm your slave now, she yelled out in pain, which stopped it suddenly. The seal reacted in the only way that would allow it to maintain its usual functions without the control seal that Hinata always wore. As such, it bound me to hers, and your own, life forces. Now that we've returned, I'm bound to the both of you. Both Hinata and Naruto stared in wide-eyed shock. The strongest demon in existence was now completely and totally their slave. Are you serious? Naruto asked quietly, still not fully out of his shock. Kyuubi simply scoffed and rolled her eyes. Quite, mortal, I can feel the seal and its effects. She stopped and scrunched up her face, trying to figure out how to explain it, can feel what I am supposed to do. I feel compelled to do your bidding and to please you. She shook her head furiously, getting rid of the thoughts that flew through her head. Believe me when I tell you that I would have had to have thought long and hard between this and non-existence had I known the effects it would have had. Naruto and Hinata looked at each other before Naruto turned his attention back to the red-haired woman in front of him. So, you have to do anything we tell you, no matter what. Kyuubi grimaced, but nodded. Yes, so long as it is within my ability to do it. I cannot, however, knowingly attack either of you or those you command me not to, or those who are allied to you two specifically. Well, that's. Hinata wasn't sure exactly what it was at this point. She'd never been happy with the caged bird seal because it was a milder form of the current situation, but this was complete and total domination. A part of her held no reservations of having a demon under control like this, while the larger part of her felt it was a crime against life. Okay, Naruto said, breaking the uncomfortable silence. We'll deal with that later. I'm not really sure how we can do that, exactly, but we'll just have to think on it. What about my body? And what about the tails and nails and ears and all that other random stuff you told us about? Why haven't we gotten those yet? Kyuubi sighed. This was going to be a long explanation if the boy hadn't become as smart as he seemed to be in the future. Alright, I'll give you the long version and hope it's clear. Basically, when we went back, you had to merge slightly with me, which meant my power. Because I'm a fox, and my power is of myself, it is genetically predisposed to be fox-like. There may not be any physical attribute to it in here while I'm within you, but it was created of my physical fox body and my fox mind. With me so far. Naruto and Hinata nodded, actually understanding so far. Basically, humans had chakra that they had because they were humans and demons had demon chakra. And since so many demons were different, that would explain why it was different colors and felt different. Good. Now, when we merged slightly so I could take you back with me and not start the same history we had before all over again, my chakra changed your own, but made you a little foxy. I suppose. Basically, that means that you have your normal human bodies and thoughts that you started with, and added a little fox into the mix. What does that actually mean? Naruto interrupted. Are we turning into foxes or what? No, the Kyuubi sighed again, you are not turning into foxes. At least not fully. You see, when we merged to allow you to come back, you each had some of my chakra put into yours. Well, a lot is more accurate. Because of that, once you entered your previous bodies, that merger began to slowly change your physical forms to match your Hanyu forms you will be getting. Basically, the regeneration you, Naruto, already had, is fixing you to what it believes you should be. And now, Hinata is the same. It's just happening in Naruto a little faster because I'm inside of him and there's that much more of my own chakra. So, you're saying we could wake up one day and simply have tails and ears and such? Yes, but tails and ears will be among the last things to come about. Well, in a way. Naruto narrowed his eyes as Kyuubi cringed. What do you mean, in a way, Kyuubi? Well, I'm inside of you and I can control the transformation. But I cannot do anything for Hinata without being in her to do so. So where I can make certain things change at a time, with Hinata's happening all at once when they start. What? Kyuubi cringed, hoping even stronger than she had since they entered that he didn't accidentally give her an order that meant her life. Well, I can alter the transformation as needed because I've got a direct link inside of you, but I don't with her. Naruto and Hinata sat against each other on the couch in silence for several minutes before the Kyuubi offered another option. But, I may be able to keep it safe for her and you both. Naruto eyed her suspiciously, causing her to fidget restlessly. There is a way to break a seal into multiple parts even after its creation. We can do that with the Shikifuan seal and I will be able to be there for both of you to control the changes and my power can be drawn by either of you. But I thought you said we couldn't use your power anymore, Hinata said, causing the Kyuubi to nod her head. You can't. Not like Naruto did in your past. But I can heal you both even faster than your increased regeneration. This will also allow me to come out on my own and offer a mental link like what Naruto shares with me now with you, Hinata. Both Naruto and Hinata could see the benefits of such a link between them. If nothing else, that would have made it worth it. How can we be sure that you are really bound by what we say? I mean, if we do that and you can come out at will, then what's to keep you from hurting anyone? Hinata asked. Unfortunately, there was no way for them to know for sure. They could try to order the Kyuubi to do something, but if she was looking for an out so they would allow her this to escape, then she'd simply do it. However, talking it over, they found that everything was as they were told. At least in regards to what they could confirm. I think, Hinata paused and bit her lower lip while turning to Naruto, that we should do it, Naruto-kun. So far, I have not yet seen a reason not to believe in her. Naruto sat quietly for several minutes before finally nodding. Alright, just to be sure it's been said, just in case. Kyuubi, you may not do anything to bring harm to myself or Hinata except what may be necessary for this to work. You may not harm anyone within Konoha and if you bring about Hinata's death, you must kill yourself immediately. Kyuubi's eyes widened, but she shook her head and thought through the commands quickly. I see no problems with those commands. We shouldn't be attacked as there won't be any chakra transference between the two of you and this isn't dangerous unless you are worse at seals than I think you to be. We should have no problems and it should only take a few minutes after finishing the seals to have it all completed, but it may knock Hinata unconscious for a few hours. And by doing this, and by turning into Hanyu, your reserves will grow quickly, so you'll want to constantly be doing chakra control exercises. Naruto nodded and turned to Hinata. Think we should do it tomorrow morning. As early as possible. Hinata nodded. I'll be by about 6 or earlier. I can't stay at the Hyuga compound too late or I'll get pulled into getting something done. But if worse comes to worse, I can probably offer a test of the Kaden and explain that you helped me with the power aspect while I taught you chakra control. I doubt it will come to that, however, she said. She then turned to the Kyuubi. How long should I be out, do you think? Shrugging, the Kyuubi responded. No more than probably 3 hours and as few as just a few minutes. It really depends on how well you take to it. Being receptive to what's happening, it will reduce the time. But writing the seals will take about an hour to be sure we don't mess any of them up and it will have to cover most of your body. Hinata waved off the need of nudity. I have no problems getting in front of Naruto-kun for this, she said, inwardly smirking at Naruto's blushing smile. I trust him not to do anything naughty with my unconscious body. She giggled when she heard Naruto gulp, amused that she could get a reaction out of him. But then she realized this wasn't exactly a good time for it, but she hadn't thought of it before then and she was teasing him more than even before they went back. Kyuubi, I've been teasing Naruto-kun more today than I did before we came back. Does that have to do with the changes we're going through? Kyuubi nodded. Yes. You will be almost entirely who you were before we came back, but you were given slightly more. I'm not sure how to say it, baser or maybe animalistic ideas and tendencies. Basically, you are who you were, but now you have fewer inhibitions towards certain aspects of your minds because it's trying to mix partly with the mind of a fox, say 10%, and your mind, by the rest of the 90%. There will be some things that you will allow to change so you remain as close to the same as you can. Such as what, exactly? What do you think is most likely for us to change? Naruto asked. Well, apparently your relationship and similar things like that, it would seem. You're probably going to be highly affectionate because humans don't have a single period of time that they mate like we do. So instead of being purely about taking each other physically and constantly at a single point, you will instead be affectionate always. That makes sense, actually, Hinata agreed. So this is basically something that keeps me from wanting to, she looked at Naruto and blushed, have constantly with him. Kyuubi made a somewhat gesture with her hand before responding. Almost exactly right. You may still want to have, but you won't physically need to or be controlled by it. You will be in full control over your emotions at all times, except for loving gestures like marking each other, or hugging to you humans, kissing and such. Then you'll probably enjoy battle more. Not killing itself. Kyuubi rushed to assure them as they both opened their mouths to voice their disapproval, but you will enjoy the fight. You'll enjoy the hunt and such, but you will not want to go about simply for the sake of killing. Not unless you were predisposed to do that already. And you'll probably enjoy meat much better and not care as much for vegetables. Naruto and Hinata sat for only a few moments before Naruto shrugged. It doesn't seem all that bad to me so far. I've always enjoyed fighting my enemies and showing my strength, but I didn't care to just get into a fight just to fight. I wasn't much for fighting, but I enjoy showing my strength, Hinata amended for herself while Kyuubi nodded with a smile. Exactly. Demons, in general, love to show their strength. Usually it's to themselves with killing, she said, somewhat sheepishly, but your own personalities will keep that from happening, guaranteed. The other two nodded to show their agreement to the plan. Really, if they wanted to keep things safe and without the entirety of Konoha finding out that something drastic happened, it had to be done. What about this mental link thing? Naruto asked. How will that work? Well, I'm not totally sure. I believe it will be like you and I share. We can speak and get a general idea of what the other is feeling, but it may be weaker or stronger. I just don't truly know. I've never worked with anything like this before. While disappointed, both decided to move on and see what else they could figure out before they had to leave. Okay. Naruto began. We'll slowly be turning into Hanyu and you can control it, but we have to split the Shikifuin in order for you to make sure Hinata's transformation. By splitting the seal between us, we will have some kind of mental link that could be nothing, or give us some super awesome way to communicate to each other, and by going back in time, the control seal we had so your chakra wouldn't corrupt me while using it changed and made you mine and Hinata's slave. Is there anything we've missed? Kyuubi shook her head, looking thoughtful. No, that seems to be everything. A summoning contract is simply an agreed upon set of rules and method of actions allowed. With my situation, in being forced into whatever you tell me to do, that substitutes any contract you and I could make together, Kyuubi was certainly far from happy about her situation, and that was obvious to both Naruto and Hinata. So we can both use the same summoning seals I used for Gamabunta and the other toads. Yes. You just need to think of me instead of the toad you want. Naruto and Hinata nodded. Hinata was happy Naruto had allowed her to sign the summoning contract not long after the war got worse. It kept her from having to learn it all over again. Alright, so have we got anything else we need to talk about right now? Kyuubi began to shake her head until she saw Hinata's eyes light up and raise her hand slightly. Actually, I just want to confirm, she said looking at the Kyuubi. I won't get to a point where I physically need to have and, like I've seen of some animals, just go to any man and, Kyuubi instantly shook her head and interrupted Hinata. No, 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 no. You'll be gaining fox-like attributes in that regard. While you would normally be like that as a full demon, where you need the physical mating bit, this is not like that. You may feel extremely promiscuous, but Naruto will be the only male you have any interest in whatsoever. Foxes aren't like wolves, who mate for life, but the alpha male gets his choice of the females and the females are fully faithful, even to the point of getting downright vicious towards males who are too stupid to try and draw the female's attentions or smell that she's been marked. Hinata scrunched up her face in thought. So, I may get the urge to have with him, but I will never care to have another man. You simply won't have any interest in other males at all. Because of your human side, you can flirt with a man. She smartly ignored Naruto's growling, as your job as a ninja may require, but you will never allow a man to touch you in a manner you reserve for Naruto. Hinata nodded, understanding. I can live with that. XXXXXXX. Naruto and Hinata awoke back in his apartment and still facing each other on the couch, Hinata still in his lap, straddling him as they were before they entered his mind. Looking at the alarm clock in his room through the door, Naruto saw it was still before noon. Well, that was quick. Want to go get lunch? Hinata nodded with a beautiful smile. Very much so. They exited his apartment and began their trek to Ichiraku Ramen. We should start training tomorrow if I wake up early enough from the seal transfer and feel okay. Naruto nodded and watched his feet as he walked in thought. Yay, I'm still trying to get used to being a midget again. Hinata giggled and latched onto his arm. Well, your new diet will work on that and the competent exercise will fix that. Naruto sighed as he realized she was going to control what he ate again. She did it the last time around, too. It was just as horrible then. Yes, dear. Hinata giggled again, really enjoying herself. XXXXXXX. Omake. I don't understand, Ino-chan, Naruto said, finally getting fed up with Ino's fangirl ramblings of the last Uchiha. You and all of the other girls in Sasuke's fan club are so dead set on trying to get the Tem to notice and go out with you, but you don't even step back to see exactly what you're getting into. Ino, who'd been shocked out of her reverie, suddenly turned livid. Naruto baka, how can you say that? He's the smartest boy in the school, is the most handsome, is the lone survivor of the Uchiha massacre and, she blushed and giggled perversely, he has to revive his entire clan. She let out a squeal as she ran in place quickly, her arms pulled in tightly. Naruto only scoffed and rolled his eyes, gaining her attention again. He'd seen the last Uchiha in the showers before. He'd have a lot of work cut out for him to revive anything. Trust me, you're not missing anything there, he snorted. Though I sometimes wonder if he is. Ino was simply outraged. Baka, you can't say such things about Sasuke-kun. Naruto simply quirked an eyebrow at her. Oh, I tell you what, if Hinata-chan and I offer to keep watch over your body, why don't you take control over him and take him to use the restroom and check? We won't tell anyone about it and you'll have the singular ability, of all the girls in Konoha, to say that you've seen his little Uchiha up close and personal. Naruto watched as Ino's eyes widened to epic proportions and a delicate blush spread across her cheeks. How could she honestly never have thought of that? It was brilliant. It was genius. She would have that much over on forehead girl. Why you'll watch over my body? She asked quietly, and Hinata too. Naruto nodded as he motioned for Hinata to come over and explain things to her. Hinata looked at the girl as if she were about to do something that she shouldn't have to experience, as she promised to make sure her body would remain safe. Biting her lower lip, Ino finally nodded and silently slid in between Naruto and Hinata and lined Sasuke up in her sights before launching her spirit at the dark-haired Avenger, who barely flinched as Ino oriented herself in his body. Quickly looking around to make sure she had control, Ino, now Sasuke, raised her hand to be excused to the restroom and quickly left. Naruto-kun, Hinata whispered, should we really have let her find out like that? I mean, even if that wasn't wrong, it is an invasion of privacy for Sasuke. Naruto smiled and shook his head. Yes, it may not exactly be the morally correct thing to do, but it should keep her from chasing after the Tem and allow her to focus on truly being a kunoichi, which may save her life later on down the road. Hinata seemed to think about it for only a moment before nodding. You're right, I suppose. I just wish, whatever she'd have wished was lost as a terrified scream tore through the academy. There was some very loud thumping before Sasuke, with Ino in control, tore up to Iruka and grabbed the man by the collar of his shirt and jerked him down to eye level. What the hell is this? Sasuke asked the confused and terrified Chunin teacher. I thought all Uchiha were supposed to be hung like gods. But this. Deciding that Iruka really needed to understand, Sasuke, still with Ino at the controls, flung down the pants and pointed at it accusingly. What happened to all the stories? It was a dark day for Uchiha Sasuke, as he lost all of his fangirls and fanboys within Konohagakure and had no clue why he went into class one day, top of the food chain, only to come back the next with a status in the village that was nearly as bad as the village pariahs. Naruto could feel a warm hand sliding up his thigh, his side, and then finally down his jaw before soft lips touched his own, bringing him fully into the realm of the waking. Blinking, he could see the smiling face of Hinata looking down at him from her place beside him in the bed. Hey, Hina, he mumbled over a yawn. When do you get here? Just a few minutes ago. Come on, she said, ripping the blankets off of him, time to get out of bed. We've got a seal to change. As she pulled the blankets, she inadvertently made him roll over and off the bed to the floor with a grunt of pain. Oops, I'm so getting you back for that, he said from his place on the floor. Later, Naruto. For now, go ahead and take a shower to wake yourself up and then we'll take care of the seal. After that, we can talk about naughty little punishments, she finished with a giggle before going to the living room to move things to the side. Before she left the bedroom, she turned her head to face him. Oh, and Naruto, hurry up, I don't think I'll be able to get out of these clothes alone. With a bright smile, she left a wide-eyed, gaping Naruto to fumble his way to the bathroom. Damn fox sending us back when my damned hormones are kicking in. He spent the next several minutes in an ice-cold shower, being watched by the Byakugan user the entire time. XXXXXXX. Naruto kept his hand as steady as possible as he drew a series of caricatures over Hinata's bare stomach and chest. Oh, how he was wishing for another cold shower. The fact that Hinata herself was ticklish and holding in her laughter as best as possible, making her breathe deeply and shake in barely controlled fits of giggles, making two very impressive objects jiggle, distracting him each time. Keep your focus, Naruto. Once this is done, you can talk with her about going down that route. The Kyuubi was so high-strung with the near screw-ups from Naruto's distractions that could bring everything to ruin. All because he couldn't keep his damned eyes to himself. Naruto inked several kanji and symbols into a circle just above her left and around her heart before making a series of directional control seals down to just above her belly button and crafted a seal exactly as Kyuubi told him. This particular one was a demonic containment seal that was especially used for such purposes as this, containing a portion of a high-volume chakra entity. The details of the seal itself were far more intricate than even his own Shikifuin, but required far fewer symbols, since he had a pool of demonic characters that were more specific to his current needs. Almost done, Tenshi-chan. Hinata giggled quietly as he raised the brush from her belly, each stroke tickling her mercilessly. We'll have to do this again sometime, Naruto-kun. She giggled again, enjoying how Naruto's eyes seemed to gravitate towards her chest while her own looked at his erection, thanking the demon within him that seals had to be placed upon his own body as well. He gave a loopy smile until Kyuubi interrupted his staring, again. Enough for now, grr. Take that kunai and cut straight down the Shikifuin and draw the final seal inside the circle over her belly in the blood. It doesn't have to be deep. Naruto did as told, agreeing with Hinata that there wasn't much else that could be done otherwise than to trust the fox vixen. Once done, he pulled back and placed bloodied fingertips in the center of the seal he just drew in blood and the one over her heart and began to channel chakra. As Kyuubi's chakra leaked out of the changing seal on his stomach, several containment seals drawn around them on the floor to preempt this very problem in case Naruto wasn't perfect on the seal activated and blocked the demonic chakra from escaping so no one would be able to sense the release of a massive amount of energy and contain it to be absorbed by one of the two within its confines. Luckily, a web of chakra formed around the escaping chakra in the shape of a tube and directed the fox's chakra where it belonged. For roughly 20 long minutes, their bodies stiffened, their backs arched and neither were able to move as Naruto watched a veritable stream of pure chakra poured into the seal over her stomach. He was shocked when her ears regressed inside of her head and furry ears grew over her head with her same hair color and her eyes gained slitted pupils. Her hands grew slightly and her fingernails lengthened and thickened. Her body rippled and he could see her body grow slightly and her muscles contracted until she had a series of muscles similar to his own and finally, 4 tails grew from under her, their color the same as her hair. Though unable to see himself, he could feel similar changes to himself. After feeling the last of the chakra flow between the two of them stop, both of them slumped to the ground, Naruto laying beside Hinata with an arm draped over her. His body twitched violently several times before he was able to gain control over his body again. Once he did, he slowly raised himself up and checked Hinata, seeing she was unconscious. Oh sweet Kami, that hurt. His attention was drawn to Hinata as her foxy features began to recede and made her look normal again, aside from the height change and muscle mass increase. The hell, Kyuubi, what's going on? I told you, she said quietly and slowly, obviously worn out for some reason, your Hanyu and will be able to hide your features. That means you have your human forms and your half-demon forms and then, finally, full demon forms since I'm with you both. You will be able to change between them. She changed back to her human form because she unconsciously knows that form better. So, she's okay? He asked worriedly. Yes, quite. She's just going through the full merger right now. Her mind and the mind of a demon being reformed into one where she will accept parts of her mind for what she wants to be more like and get rid of the parts that she doesn't want. Naruto picked up Hinata from the floor and carried her to his bedroom and laid her on the bed, taking the spot next to her and covering them both up. What about me? Why am I not unconscious and going through those changes? And I thought she was already going through those mental changes. Kyuubi let out a yawn before answering, barely able to remain awake from being split between the two of them. It was, but that was more of a small change for where she wanted it, so to speak. You mean she wanted to tease me more and let me see her and such? Kyuubi chuckled. Most definitely. But, I thought she wanted to wait. Naruto was completely confused. They had talked about doing things together and she had wanted to wait until they got married to do anything naughty. He had suddenly realized that she liked him and things progressed rather quickly from that point and he knew she didn't want to rush into anything to be sure she wasn't a fling on the side and he respected that. Naruto knew she didn't believe that he was that type of guy, but insecurities abound in women who were already very insecure. Yes, she wanted to wait, but she wanted you for so long that it was the one thing she wanted to change about herself at the time. You would have to speak with her for anything more specific. And you are not unconscious because you are far more used to the demonic spirit and the changes will be very minor since the mental aspects happened with us throughout your life. Naruto hugged Hinata closer to him when she let out a small whimper and shivered, kissing her bare shoulder and tightening the blankets around them. Thank you, Kyuubi. You sound tired also, so go ahead and take a nap if you want. I'll keep an eye on her. Both Naruto and Kyuubi yawned and began to drift off. Thank you, master. Neither noticed her tired response as they both fell asleep. XXXXXXX. Are you serious? Sakura and Ino were currently attempting to track Sasuke on his jog. They'd lost him almost as soon as they first found him when they noticed each other, but now, they were sitting in a tree, waiting for him to come back and Ino was dishing out her new information. Completely. She had Naruto wrapped around her pinky. Sakura scoffed and took a quick look for Sasuke. I still don't believe he has a better body than Sasuke-kun. Ino smiled and looked in the opposite direction than Sakura. Believe it, Sakura. I helped them pick out a new wardrobe and they had him down to his boxers and he is way more developed than Sasuke-kun. Not only that, but Hinata gave me a wicked idea, she said with a smile and conspiratorial tone of voice, instantly catching Sakura's attention. Oh, like what? Both turned to face each other, missing as Sasuke walked into his house after 2 laps around the training ground. She mentioned how her Byakugan lets her see all around and through other things, such as clothes. She smiled brightly as she saw Sakura's eyes widened and a blush painted her cheeks. You mean, she's seen Sasuke-kun's? She trailed off, embarrassed to even say it. She says she did, but she said it was smaller than my index finger. Sakura's face turned red in a righteous fury as she realized what Ino was saying. That little bint. What makes her think we'll believe? Sakura. I asked the same thing and she actually explained it in a way that I would actually believe. She doesn't care for Sasuke-kun in any way and has no competition for Naruto, so she has no reason to lie and. But she said he's small and. Yes, she interrupted the pink-haired girl, she did. But she also mentioned a way for me to prove it without getting caught, and if you help, we can both see it. Sakura's wrath was warring with her own inner pervert and her inner pervert was winning. Like what? Ino blushed and looked around quickly. Well, my family's techniques allow us to take control over other people without them knowing what happens while we're in control. I figured that, if you distract him with something or other, I can take him over and we can get a few pictures for ourselves and no one ever has to know. Both sat in silence for a few minutes, thinking the whole thing through until Sakura's inner pervert reared its ugly head again. So, how big did she say Naruto was in comparison and can we get blackmail on him by doing the same thing? Ino blushed furiously. She said Naruto was twice as big as any other boys in our class and, based on the way his boxers were filled out, I'm willing to believe her. She ignored Sakura's wide-eyed and shocked expression. And Naruto bought me a dress for helping him out, so I won't blackmail him. He's actually a pretty decent guy, really. XXXXXXX. Naruto was on the edge of consciousness with an incredible feeling of soft, fluttery touches over his body, going down his chest and back up to his neck, before something firm and wet stroked his collarbone and then nibbled. Opening his eyes, he smiled as he saw the beaming face of Hinata smiling down at him. Wakey, Naruto-kun, she purred into his ear. Hinata-chan, what are you doing? While Naruto was enjoying what was happening, he knew Hinata may not be in her right mind at the moment. His fears eased when she laid down next to him, pressing the length of her body up against his. I just thought it would be a pleasant way to wake up, that's all Naruto-kun, she said, tracing patterns over his chest. I feel wonderful. My chakra capacity seems to be about 3 times what it was before the transfer and just over a quarter of what I had before we came back. She got up excitedly and spun around, showing him her body, not realizing the reaction it was causing to his body. My strength seems to be higher and I've got a lot more definition, too. She turned and smiled at him before her eyes fell from his gaping face to the large erection under the covers. She giggled as she realized what she was doing and got back under the covers and hugged him. So you don't feel any residual pain or anything? He asked, trying to get the image of her out of his mind. She was right. There was most certainly more definition. Nope. She chirruped brightly. I feel incredible. My muscles feel a little tight like I haven't used them in a little while, but no pain. He nodded and hugged her tightly back to him. My reserves went up too, but I can't tell how much. It wasn't much compared to what I had before we came back, but if Kyuubi was right, my control should still be far better. Hinata let her body go limp against him with her face in the crook of his neck, breathing in his scent. We should start working on our taijutsu and other skills to see what we're currently capable of. We need to check out techniques, speed and accuracy. Naruto nodded gently so as not to hit her with his chin. We should probably take it easy for a day or two to make sure nothing bad happens because of this. Hinata shook her head. If anything is going to happen, it will happen when I exert myself, so we'll just start slow and work our way up. Naruto paused, thinking it over, before agreeing. Alright, slow it is then. But if I see something that doesn't look right, I'm taking you straight to the hospital. What time is it, anyway? I can agree with that. Just don't get worried for nothing, and it's a few minutes after 9, so we can get a little bit of training in before lunch. She got out of bed and got dressed, enjoying watching Naruto squirm as he was forced to acknowledge his frustration. He tried to put his own clothes on to find that he couldn't do so while hard and wound up waiting nearly 20 minutes for it to go away. From there, they left to check their current abilities and then train in earnest. XXXXXXX. Naruto woke up very early the next day, the first day of his return to the academy, with a bright smile on his face. He and Hinata had spent the whole previous day purely working on taijutsu since they had to worry anyone noticing a sudden drop in the ability they were supposed to have. Hinata had found it easy to get back into her Juyuken abilities. But like Naruto, she kept overestimating her reach and tried to strike at points that were further than she had available reach for. However, with an available and quick healing practice dummy called Naruto, she was easily able to get the hang of the change. With the change due to the seal alteration where she gained several inches, it wasn't quite as bad as it could have been. Naruto, sadly, wasn't quite as capable. In his defense, he reasoned that Hinata held status as a well-versed Juyuken user who couldn't suddenly have worse skills while his own taijutsu at the time was nothing more than street brawling, which he could easily do now. Especially when he was used to taking hits. It was for that very reason, however, that Naruto made so sure to wake up at 5 in the morning. He didn't bother with a shower since his plans would make it pointless and, instead, put on his old orange clothes and ran out to training ground 4, where he knew his targets would be. Several minutes later, he walked into a clearing where two men were going through some rather extreme physical exercises. Naruto stood off to the side, but within Maida Guy's range of vision, waiting for him to invite him over. He didn't doubt the man's ability to notice him and was rewarded after a minute of waiting with Guy's hand motioning him forward. Ah, to what does the great Maida Guy owe the pleasure of your visit this fine morning? Lee, seeing the newcomer, hopped up and stood beside his sensei with a curious expression on his face. I am Uzumaki Naruto, student at the academy, he began, slipping into debriefing mode easily and unconsciously, his expression and tone serious. You are Maida Guy, #1 taijutsu specialist with no other equal in Konoha aside from your eternal rival, Hatake Kakashi when he uses his implanted Sharingan, and your student, Rock Lee, genin of 1 year under your command in Team 9. No chakra ability that has been a hindrance only to those who do not know him, as he's increased his own taijutsu form and ability to become a respectable genin of Konohagakure that is usually underestimated, to his opponent's folly. Both Guy and Lee were shocked at the stranger's knowledge and curious where it was going. Then his expression turned into his usual foxy smile, throwing both for a loop. And I'd like to ask for training in taijutsu in exchange for becoming a sparring partner with Lee. Guy had been very curious, even becoming wary, of the boy in front of him. He knew who the boy was, even without his odd introduction. He had only ever heard bad things about the boy from those who already hated him and only good things from those who didn't. While he doubted anyone's ability to keep up with his Lee, this would be the one boy who stood the best chance considering his stamina and history outrunning pranked Anbu and Junin. Lee, we have found another who wishes to fan his flames of youth. Yash, we shall teach him newfound limits. Naruto ignored the icy shiver at the base of his spine and waved a hand to catch their attention. So, is this a yes? Guy looked at Naruto and smiled in a way very different than his nice guy pose. This smile was a sadistic, evil thing that promised pain to come. Let's get you set up with some weights. XXXXXXX. Hinata put the onigiri and yakitori for both herself and Naruto into her bento box, already filled with some tea and dango, and then walked quickly to the front door of the complex to meet up with Naruto and go to the academy, but was interrupted as she was coming out of the kitchen by her father. Hinata, I would like to speak with you in my study, he said, turning and walking away expecting her to follow. Yes, father. With a grimace, Hinata did so, knowing she couldn't anger him. He was her clan head, after all. They walked in silence until they were in his study and sitting in front of each other. Hinata, We received reports from branch members and from Monachis who we use exclusively for our outfitting needs that you were seen in the company of Uzumaki Naruto and were behaving in a manner that was rather uncouth for a Hyuga, and out of character for yourself. I would like you to explain. Hinata nodded. Are we speaking as father and daughter, or clan head and Hyuga? Hiyashi's eyes widened when Hinata asked such a ridiculous question. She hadn't even stuttered and was looking him in the eye. I'm afraid I don't understand. I am both of those things. Yes, but there are two ways to view yourself as clan head. This is going to tell me which you are more worried about. Your family or your clan? I still do not understand, Hinata. Our family is our clan. Why are you playing games? Hinata sighed and shook her head slightly, making Hiyashi feel she was disappointed. If you do what is best for the family, you allow the clan to prosper for themselves. If you do what is best for the clan, it is our reputation and public view you care about. I am asking, Father, if you are questioning me about these events because you are worried about me being with Naruto-kun or if you are worried what the public will think, she said forcefully, allowing a moment of silence for it to sink in before continuing. Are we speaking as father and daughter, or are we speaking as clan head and Hyuga? Hiyashi was quiet for a moment as he realized what she was asking. Was he worried about her safety or the public's opinion of the Hyuga? He had a strong feeling that his answer would also either open or close new paths with his eldest daughter depending on what it was. So he decided to take a chance. Father and daughter. Hinata simply stared at him for a few moments, causing Hiyashi to become nervous though he didn't show it, and finally nodded. All right. She smiled brightly at him, causing the knot in his stomach to loosen as he realized he probably answered correctly. I met up with